Daddle-a-dum, 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 dum-dum, daddle-dum. Very cheap intro. Doctor Who video. Doctor Who's back next week. Or if you're watching in the future, it's already been on and you've missed it. And last night there was Children in Need. Remember, folks, charity is an expression of a failure of government. If I was your benevolent dictator, there would be no charity because I'd look after all the poor children. There would be taxes to pay for the poor children. So, yeah. So that's my view of charity for Children in Need. But on Children in Need, we had a little skit, a Doctor Who skit. And we saw, another bootstrap paradox, please. If only I could go back in time and stop Darren from making this video about bootstrap paradoxes. But can we stop having them, please? Can we stop having them? They were fun once, but then they're no longer fun. But I'm getting off the point. We had a little skit about the 14th Doctor, David Tennant. Oh, dude, we have to bring him back. Why couldn't we have Paul McGann instead? Why can't we see something new? Are we doing that because we want to get the old viewers' bums back on the sofas? It's a very cynical ploy from Mr. Russell Davies. And I don't really care for it much, to be honest. I just want to get onto the new guy. But it's done for a reason. It's done to, to get bums on seats. But we had a skit where 14th Doctor, David Tennant, arrives on Skaro. He crashes his TARDIS and is the reason that Daleks have plungers. Now, if he'd have been clever, he'd have replaced it with an egg whisk, wouldn't he? Because at least they'd have had, could knock up a really good meringue. But they didn't think like that. They didn't think like that. So yeah. So, and he also names the Dalek, which again is thoroughly irritating. But the big standout thing is Davros in this episode is once again played by Julian. Is it Julian Bleach? That doesn't sound right. Is that right? Julian Bleach. Just sounds like a wrong name, isn't it? It's like being called Tony Cancer or something, isn't it? Or Freddie Formaldehyde. But anyway, Julian. We got a little. Oh God, pop-ups on the Radio Times website is horrible. Here he is. Here we are. Here he is with his assistant, played by Mawaz Rizwan. He's playing Mr. Castavillian, or cast as a villain. Get it? You see what Russell Davies has done there. Now you've got to remember that the Khalids were notorious racial Puritans. So the fact that he's got an Asian assistant wasn't lost on many of us, because it was a parallel to Nazis, the master race. That's what Genesis of the Daleks presented back in the day. But anyway, we have this new Davros who's walking around. And in an interview, Russell Davies explained why. He said, we had a long conversation about bringing Davros back because he's a fantastic character, but time and society and culture and taste has moved on. And there's a problem with Davros of old, that he's a wheelchair user who is evil. And I had problems with that. And a lot of us on the production team had problems with that, of association disability with evil. And trust me, there's a very long tradition of this. I'm not blaming people in the past at all, but the world changes. And when the world changes, Doctor Who has to change as well. So he made the choice to bring back Davros without the facial scarring and without the wheelchair or his support unit, which functions as a wheelchair. I say, this is how we see Davros now. This is how he looks like. This is 2023. This is our lens. This is our eye. Things used to be black and white. They're not in black and white anymore. And Davros used to look like that. And he looks like this now. And that's what we're absolutely standing by. Now, right, there's a lot to talk about here. One, I don't think anybody looked at Davros. I don't think anybody who's disabled looked in Davros and said, they based that on me. Again, if you're familiar with the story, and again, I'm not one of these people that are hung up on canon. I mean, I like it when the show is playful with it, like they did with The Time as Children. I like that. I like what they did there, because the idea that the Gallifreyan Time Lords were always a little bit shifty. And I like the idea of them experimenting on children that they found, which again would have probably been another bootstrap paradox if it was allowed to play out in the full flux version. We all know that, you know, Bell and Vinder's child, they were probably, one of them was probably a Gallifreyan, yeah? And their child was the timeless child that gets kidnapped by the master, who wants to harness their power for unlimited mashed potato or whatever it is, unlimited rice pudding. Forgot my own headcanon there. And then would have been sent back and would have been discovered, and so circular bootstrap paradox thing. That's probably how it would have played out if, you know, budget cuts and COVID hadn't have struck. So, you know, I'm not too hung up on things, but this is an example of how ideology is seeping in to everything, and it is stifling creativity. Now, I'm not saying we should, you know, make racist parodies or be ableist or whatever, but nobody ever saw Davros as disabled. He was very much able, you know, because he cybernetically enhanced himself with his life support unit, with his cybernetic eye, you know. And by doing what they've done, and again, I feel a right dweeb for making these points, but it's a comment about ideology seeping in to the creative process. That's what I'm talking about. And when we do this, we end up basically taking out all the interesting stuff. We take out all the interesting bits of the character. Now he's just reduced to me. He's reduced to a balding white man, middle-aged man, right? There's nothing interesting about me. There's nothing interesting about Davros now. He is not interesting, right? He's just now a cartoon villain. The previous Davros, again, if you this goes back to my childhood. this goes back to my childhood. He says, "Oh, wait a minute. I've got to show me credentials. Wait a minute." I had to run to the east wing then. See, this shows my credentials. This is my original copy, and again, it tells you all about the Daleks. This is my Bible, but this is wrong now because Davros is no longer in a life support unit. But yeah, he's damaged in a blast, and so he fixes himself, and he creates the life support system and the cybernetic eye, and Davros exists first. He exists before the Daleks, and it's his technology that they come out of him. He becomes this idea of Davros becoming God. You know, the master race again feeds into Nazism. It doesn't come out of his disability. It comes out of the way he views his ability to kind of transverse death. You know, he becomes godlike because he doesn't die, because he creates this technology. And so the only way his race can survive is if they become like him, you know, but a more battle-ready version of him. And that's where the Daleks come from. Now, you take that out of the equation, and Davros now is just a guy who creates a machine. That's it. He's just a guy who creates a machine. And that's what happens when ideology gets involved with the creative process. Now, again, we have certain filters, we have certain things, you know, that we don't want to offend people, but sometimes in art, we do want to offend people. We do want to, you know, press the button, disturb the hornet's nest. It's part of the creative process. And this is where you become hamstrung by this need not to offend. All right? So, in order not to offend, does every villain have to be an able-bodied white man? Do we get now? Again, the funny thing is if you're a man of my vintage, you don't care anyway. You're not going to offend me. I don't care if you offend me. I just turn off. But this is what we're talking about now. I've actually seen on the old YouTubes, there are creators who have become, again, paralysed by the fear of offending their viewers. There's one notable one. He's out there. He's a British YouTuber who hasn't created anything because he's terrified of offending I don't know. I'm getting Kent. What's that? What's that playing? It's an advert on the Radio Times website, which I'm quoting from. It just magically appeared. This is entertaining, isn't it? But yeah, it becomes a way of, you enter a creative cul-de-sac, and this is what we're going to see now. This is why you wonder why everything becomes so bland. You wonder why all the villains are just, and again, you see it in Marvel movies and whatever. Everything becomes bland and homogenous because we dare not create things that are out of the norm, that are out of, you know, out of industry, out of the, well, here, right? Again, you can't have facial scarring, because if you've got a scar, you're evil. No. Again, when villains have scars, and it usually signifies, you know, that they fight, you know, that they're bruisers, that they're tough, that you wouldn't want to mess with them. If you've got a scar, you know, a big scar on your face, you go, ooh, you know. Whereas if you've got a face like a baby's bottom, you're going to go, you're not scary. You're not scary at all. You know, it's about intimidation. The character's got to have some sort of, you know, gravitas. And we are confusing, you know, again, it's all about, this is identity politics playing itself out to its natural conclusion. And it will end up being the end of art and the end of creativity. Well, it won't be. It won't be, because things will still be created. It just, they won't be as engaging, and they won't capture the imagination like Davros did. Again, Davros is scary. His evilness manifests itself externally. All right. Now, you can subvert that. I mean, there was an idea. Was it The Impossible Planet, where Tennant finds the devil? Now, the original idea was he was going to find a little girl. The idea is that supreme evil is just, you wouldn't necessarily see it, and that's, again, you can subvert that expectation. Again, that's Russell T Davies should have actually gone. I'll use the T then. Russell Davies should have gone with that idea, I think, instead of you having the big fuck off devil, which is stupid. If it was something benign, you know, that's more terrifying. Evil can have, the idea is that evil can have many faces. But now, when you strip an established character of the things that make him the character, psychologically, Davros is just a guy. He's just a guy who creates a machine. Whereas before, he was a guy who was crippled by a nuclear blast or whatever it was, who fixes himself, who becomes enamoured by his own hubris and ability to create technology, which he then, ping, they spent money on toys in Smith's Toys, the rotters. Hope it's something good. That's Mario. My son's on a Mario thing at the moment. I've gone off the topic. Don't worry, I'll edit this out. So yeah, it kind of fundamentally changes the whole character and his impetus. There's no need for the new Davros to strive for being a god, you know. And if he starts ranting and raving about being a god, it's kind of pointless, isn't it? Really, because he's no, you know, he copies himself. If they do have a scene where he's back in the chair, he's copying the Daleks, not the other way around. It's putting the cart before the horse, and I've gone on far too long, and I feel like a right bloody man baby over this, but I don't care. It's just a skit. But I'm talking about this just to show you what happens when you let ideology affect your creative process. It strips all the interesting ideas out. All the interesting ideas get ripped out. You know, just... And yeah, just go back and look at the history of Davros and what motivates him, what, you know, drives him forward, how the Daleks were created, how he ends up, you know, again, at one stage he is just like a disembodied head, you know, saying he's going to be God, you know, unlimited rice pudding. I get it right at the time. And you can see with this, another bootstrap paradox, Davies undoes a lot of that mythos and renders the character impotent and really quite boring. You know, that's it now. This is, of course, he could just be trolling us all. Again, I do think there is a little bit of a glint in Davis's eye, and he likes to try. So it could be that he just didn't have money for a budget for the makeup, and Bleach didn't want to get back in the chair, you know, and that's the reason why, you know, don't trust anything he says. But yeah, that's the point of the story. Is this is what happens when you let ideological views and identity politics involve itself in your creative process. You end up becoming lesser for it. There is not one thing out there that's been grabbed by the public imagination, that's been created via this ideological filter. There's not one thing now. It's all gone, because we now live in a post-cultural society, and we're seeing it. This is the result of post-culturalism, and that's the video. And yeah, that's it, and that's why we are weaker now by adopting these strange beliefs. Again, you know, you don't want to write things that are going to upset people unless that's your intention, and it's there for a point. You know, there is a purpose. There is a purpose for offence. But when you go out of your way to be totally and utterly non-offensive, you create something that is utterly useless. That's the video. Thank you for watching. I'm gonna somehow get back in my TARDIS and I don't know, and go back to the beginning of this video and tell myself not to make it, because I'm just a fucking man baby now, like the rest of it. I've just, what can you say? I just feel like every other fucking dweeb now. Oh God, is this how it ends? I guess it is. Thank you for watching, and let me just. Oh God, they're all stuck in. I've got a pot of. I've got to get them all out. Just remembered. I've got me. I'm ready. I'm ready. Have you got the new one? I have, because I'm a dweeb, just like you. Thank you for watching. Tutty bye.